So our goal here is to take the logic that we have inside of our consumer, the user settings component, and move this logic to a separate function that would be exposed by the context module. So what I'm going to do is copy this, what I have right here, and come up here and make a function called update user. And we'll just accept some parameters here in just a second, but I'm just going to paste what we've got in here as it is right now. And here are the things that we're going to need. We're going to need our dispatch function, which I'll just go ahead and call dispatch generically, because we can assume that it's going to be the user dispatch that's passed, because this is part of our user context module. So we'll say dispatch, and then we have some form state here, and we have the user. So those are two things that we're going to need as well. That's our user and the updates that we're going to be making for our user. So we'll pass the updates there. We'll pass the updates here, and then we'll have our user right here. And then let's just go ahead and return this value so that whoever is calling into this update user function has access to the promise, so they can continue the promise chain if that's what they want to do. And then we're going to export that as part of our module. Now we're putting everything here in a single file to make it easier for you, so you don't have to open up a bunch of files. But this is typically the way that this is going to work, is you'll put all of these functions in a single module and then export all of those and then import those where they're needed. So here we're going to import the update user from that context file. And then down here, we're going to call update user, and we'll pass it the user dispatch, the user, and the form state. And we'll save that. We'll come back over here and check this works. We'll hit submit. We'll see the ... and the optimistic update, and we'll get the check mark. And then if we have a failure, then we'll hit submit. We'll see that optimistic update and then a revert when we get that error caught. And then we reset our form to get the current state into our form. So not a whole lot of changes here. We pretty much just moved something into another function. So why is this even a pattern? Well, the benefit of this pattern is that we can take all of this stuff and put it into a separate function and then pass the things that are required. Now, each one of these is going to require the dispatch function, and the benefit of doing things this way is that when we have multiple dispatches that we're going to be calling, if we just leave that up to the user of our context, it's very possible that they might miss a dispatch call. So it's better to pass that user dispatch to this context module function so it can ensure that we're calling the dispatch in the right order. A common thing that people will do instead is they'll put the update user inside of their consuming hook, or maybe even inside of the value, but then you have to worry about memoizing a whole bunch of stuff to make sure that you can use these functions inside of a use effect dependency list or a use callback dependency list, and that can have a spidering effect across your entire code base. In addition to that, it also means that you can't code split or tree shake any of these context module functions. It also hurts your ability to lazily load some of these helper functions as well. So in my code bases and in code bases that I've observed at Facebook, this is the typical pattern where they will take the state and will also expose the dispatch itself within context, and then that dispatch function will be used directly by consumers. And in situations where you have multiple dispatch calls that you need to make for asynchronous UI updates like this, you can make a context module function which accepts that dispatch as well as anything else that's needed, and that can manage calling dispatch correctly. Now, I'm actually going to refactor this update user a little bit just to make it more useful for people. For example, if I wanted to take the user, then I'd need to resolve this promise with that user, or if I wanted to catch an error, then I want to be able to propagate that error in the promise. And in my case, I don't want to catch the error, so I'm just going to say ignore the error. But it's very possible that you'll have situations like this. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to switch this to async await, because I think that'll look a little bit easier. And we'll say a try catch around this update user. We'll await that and get our updated user. And then we can do our dispatch on that updated user and then return the updated user. So we can resolve the promise with that updated user. And then in the event of an error, then we can handle that by dispatching that error, and then we'll return a promise.reject of that error, or you could also throw that error. And now I can get rid of this, and this is the context module function.